So, something that occurred to me at the end of Volume 7 was that the presence of Salem created something of a pitfall for the writers of the show. They already established that Salem is incapable of dying, so now that she is front and center, the options available in the finale of the volume become severely limited. The writers wrote themselves into a corner. This is because a confrontation with Salem is pretty much unavoidable. You can only meet her challenge and beat her badly enough to make her retreat, or narrowly escape your own demise in such a way that it legitimizes spending another 2 volumes licking your wounds while mounting a counterattack. What I'm trying to address here is that the action of RWBY so far is giving mixed signals in terms of its sense of urgency. While I do think that Volume 8 played out well as far as pacing goes, the ending of that volume spells out, in my mind, that the writers are trying to force the show to slow down. And this is probably the worst decision to make. I realize now that we have 2 out of the 4 relics in play, but RWBY as a series doesn't have the lifespan to keep going on the way it is. It can't keep spending an entire volume to get to the new objective, and with Salem looming around the corner, putting the plot on cruise control is a luxury the show can't afford. Luckily, there's technically only 1 more relic to find, as well as 1 maiden. We already know that the first relic is somewhere back in Vale, and Cinder is the only one capable of getting in there. Granted, she isn't sure where to go to get it, but that's aside the point. They can probably call that thing up at the very last minute, and no one's going to care. In fact, it'll probably be refreshing to just get to the point and focus less on the getting to the thing and more on the what do we do when we have the thing. The problem the show has at this point is that it's overstaying its welcome. I just don't see any reasonable way to expect the show to naturally go all the way to 12 volumes. It just doesn't seem feasible. If anything, I'd say with the way the plot is progressing, the logical conclusion is for everyone to participate in the Battle of Mordor while Team RWBY throws the ring in the fire. The show can't afford to slow down. We can't have the same stagnant, standing around energy like in Volume 5. A lot of people criticize Volume 4 as being boring, but I'd argue that 4 was the most important in terms of slowing down the pace to re-establish the effects that Volume 3 had on the main cast. The slow burn towards the end, plus the focus on Ren and Nora, was very much appreciated by me. What I couldn't stand was just how disjointed Volume 5 felt. A lot of the screen time felt like padding. At least in Volume 4, I could feel that something was always moving. Something was always moving the plot along or moving an emotional connection to its proper conclusion. Volume 5 felt like mostly dead air. And another criticism I have with Volume 5 was their idea of payoff. It was incredibly shallow at best. RWBY learning to fight without her weapon is not something we need ham-fisted in through Oz's bizarrely smug dialogue as performed by Oscar. If you think that is the setup for the payoff, then you haven't placed any faith in the setup that already exists. Volume 2, RWBY loses her weapon and becomes vulnerable to Torchwick, a moment that is practically replicated in Volume 3, with RWBY being able to escape because of quick wit and sheer luck. Probably the most notable setup for RWBY sucks without her weapon is the moment right before the Pyrrha versus Penny fight, as she realizes that Mercury faked his leg injury and he was an obstacle preventing her from saving her friend. And he fulfilled that role successfully. That was all the setup we needed. And it was all communicated through the atmospheric tension of the show. The best way to give us some payoff is to show RWBY learning resourcefulness throughout Volume 5, or at least a little bit through Volume 4, so that when we see that situation mirrored once more, in the same way the Torchwick showdown was mirrored, RWBY can surprise us as the audience, as well as catch Mercury off guard when she's able to successfully overcome him as an obstacle when she's separated from her weapon. But if you think about it, most of the characters are almost never seen without a weapon. Probably because the weapons are seen as an extension of the characters. But for RWBY in particular, being without her weapon has put her at the mercy of someone she would normally be more than a match for. And one of those instances cost her the life of a friend. I just think that if this was a moment of growth they wanted to capitalize on, the stage was already set. Trying to create a new one mixed with that rather pathetic and slowly paced mess of a fight near the end of Volume 5 did not feel rewarding in the slightest. And speaking of the loss of a friend, I really want to address the elephant in the room. I can accept that Penny is gone, and that she is not coming back. For all that is good in this world, do not bring her back. I had actually once proposed to myself the interesting musing that there was a potential to bring her back as maybe another Penny, or perhaps even the same Penny. But because of Arthur Watts having connections through Atlas, he could blend in as one of the Atlas researchers and program Penny to prevent RWBY from gaining access to the Relic Vault. It would have been a wonderful, heart-wrenching moment seeing these two fight before the ever-predictable power of friendship allowing Penny to overcome the negative programming. And if they felt it was necessary for Team RWBY to move on, but for Penny to stay behind, I would have been fine with that. But the treatment of Penny in Volume 8 was absolutely awful. It undermined everything about Volume 7. The whole point of Penny becoming the Winter Maiden was to establish that yes, she may be mechanical, but she is indeed a real girl. And I loved it. I also thought, Winter becoming the Winter Maiden? That's a bit on the nose, isn't it? So to subvert that expectation and really lean in on the Pinocchio lore was phenomenal in my eyes. I won't deny they animated a wonderful shot and Miles' voice acting in the moment was wonderful, but I felt killing Penny off was highly unnecessary. Though to be fair, if we keep dragging Volume 5 into the conversation, I guess Penny did have a point. Considering how long it took Jean to get Weiss back up and running, it's very likely it would take too long for him to heal her. And now she's dead. For real this time. And the powers of the Winter Maiden go right to Winter, the person who is going to have it all along. And here's my grievances with Winter. Winter is by and large an off-screen character. By that I mean she can be off-screen and we, the audience, just generally assume that she must be doing something. If the writing staff were concerned about juggling all these characters, the one character they could confidently have stay behind somewhere was her. We would naturally assume she was contributing off-screen somewhere because we always have. That's how her character was established. And now she's a maiden, which means they have to figure out how to write her character. That sounds mean, but the reality is Winter's role has always been about being present as a benchmark for Weiss's growth as a character. And refreshingly enough, she doubled up quite nicely in showing us the juxtaposition of a human who understands emotion, choosing to repress them in the line of duty, versus a robot created to serve, learning about emotion and choosing to follow her heart. And in the moments that followed Penny becoming the Winter Maiden, we saw a shift in Winter, a very welcome one. She was given a character arc, and by the end of Volume 8, we got to see her take from Penny's example and do what we didn't expect from her based on who she was prior. Her character arc was fully actualized, and she had completed her role. And that's the problem. As a character, she's served her purpose, and now she's the Winter Maiden. She runs the risk of being a token character who does the thing and not do anything particularly new. In order to prevent going back to being a flat character again, we have to provide her a sense of person beyond what we've already seen. Not a sense of purpose, a sense of person. As the Winter Maiden, we already know what her role is, but who is she now that she's a maiden? With Penny, we already knew who she was before she became a maiden. Penny was already a character. The becoming of a maiden was the point the show validated Penny's existence as that character and legitimized a conversation that happened as far back as the second volume. With Winter, my hope is that this isn't a band-aid fix for actual character traits. Otherwise, she's just a super-powered plot vehicle with a blanked-out face. And I know I'm doing a lot of criticizing, but I actually do like RWBY. I watched it when it was released as a 2-part movie on Netflix. I thought it was so strange. It looked like an anime movie made in MMD, but it used a lot of American visual gags. I was very confused until I learned it was American made, and I stuck through it and found it charming. I loved RWBY's first line. The indignant sort of tone she used was just brilliant, and I loved all the character interactions and the sheer silliness of it, and the fight scenes were pretty cool too. For all of its weird shortcomings, it had a lot of potential. H. Bomber Guy did a really good piece of criticism on this show. It's really well thought out and well presented. I may not agree with all his points, but by and large, I do. The most major criticism of the show that he and I share is fully evident in the finale of Volume 8. It is very obvious to me, with the imagery of the opening theme and the ways in which the last 3 episodes play out, that the writers wanted to capture the things that made Volume 3 good without actually understanding its success. I don't want to believe Volume 3 was a fluke. There's a lot of really good elements in it. What was once a gag was used as an emotional selling point, and they did it twice with great effect. And now the gang is trapped in some other world, or perhaps a part of Remnant far removed from where they originally were. It is my honest hope that wherever this place is, we don't spend the entirety of the volume getting out of it. And if we must, which I'm predicting right now is the actuality of the situation, then I hope against all hopes that everyone on the outside who is still able to act in the world we know is able to progress the plot so that we don't spend all of Volume 10 going to the next academy and trying to find the next relic. I understand that it can't all be action and speed running to the next objective, but this is the corner they've written themselves in. The stage is already set in the next area. Salem may be left behind, but she is still on the move, and she already has her followers sent ahead of her. They're already there. All the character development we've already been given has to actually mean something now. The payoff has to come from what we've already been supplied, because it's going to be very hard to weave new development in there. This separation of Team RWBY from the actual thick of the plot is the last real chance to provide something that I think we can use to give the show the ending it deserves. And now we move on from criticism to the pitch. This is how I think RWBY needs to end. Granted, there is no doubt they will want to continue the trend of inducing body horror on Cinder. I feel there is no getting around that. And there is no doubt they will want to start pinning down character allegiances. The future of Neo is very much unknown, but we can probably make a guess that Cinder is indeed fated to either die, thus giving her powers to RWBY, or willingly join forces with Team RWBY at the very end when she inevitably retrieves the artifact from Vale and relinquishes it to the team before benching herself before the finale. So barring that, I will continue. I think this place, wherever they are, needs to be some place that they cannot use their semblances in. This would effectively neutralize Neo, and then they can play around with the challenges that presents on everyone else, too. We're going to have to get through that whole Penny is dead thing and move past that unpleasantness as quick as we possibly can. It does need its proper time, but if we dwell too much on it, it just becomes the entirety of Volume 9, and it will derail all the precious time we have left. Because as I've said before, the train is running out of track. We can slow down a little, but we are coming to a close. Trying to prolong the conclusion of the series is only going to reduce its quality and make the ending, however satisfying it may be, pale in comparison to if it had ended sooner rather than when it became too late and everyone has become jaded with the series as a whole. RWBY has to be the center of attention in Volume 9. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will be saying this, but I have reasons beyond she's a flat character, or I want to see her go off the deep end. I don't think any of that is necessary. All I think RWBY needs is coming to a sobering understanding of what's really happening. After all, the fate of the world lies in a simple soul. Someone who has come to an honest and heartfelt understanding of pain, and through strength of heart and a smile on her face can put it at ease. This place can present her a trial, a very specific trial that will allow her to look at the situation as a whole. Let's think about it. Salem is hurt. She's grieving. She lost the love of her life, and when he was brought back, the gods said, that messes with the balance of things. And then they have the nerve to decide to go ahead and bring him back to life anyway, but with a specific mission of bringing an end to her tyranny. Tyranny that they brought about by breaking the balance of things when they granted a grieving widow the curse of immortality. If you think about it, the gods are absolute dicks. The cause of all these problems actually started with them, and that's what RWBY needs to discover. The series needs to end with RWBY extending her heart to Salem and calming her corrupted soul. After all, the Silver Eyes aren't a weapon. Their power source is the desire to protect the ones you love. After putting Salem at ease, RWBY, with all 4 of the relics, summons the gods. They come back and are ready to judge the world. and then RWBY will tell them to take the relics and leave for good. Humanity has done just fine without them, and it will continue to do so without their involvement. They say that if humanity is doomed to ruin, they'll simply destroy it all. But if humanity is truly doomed, then it will destroy itself without their help. Besides which, not all humans can be painted so simply. There will always be conflict. There will always be those who have ill intent. But there are so many countless examples of people who are willing to fight for what is right and do what they can for their fellow human beings. And as long as there is that small bit of hope, the world can continue to become a better place. And RWBY believes in that future. But it can't have that future so long as the two brothers continue this absurd power grab they have over humanity. Put an end to this dumb game and let both Salem and Oz rest. The gods, shaken that RWBY not only defies the very essence of their test, but denies them the right to make the judgment call on humanity, come to the same understanding that she has and concede. Salem and Oz are allowed to pass on to the afterlife and have a cute little moment where their spirits embrace one another. Oscar can continue to be his own person again, and the gods leave with the relics in tow. And now, RWBY looks to her team and says that the hard part has just begun. It's time to make the world a better place and start making changes. And that's how the series should end. By accepting that there's still heavy lifting that needs to be done, the ending can still be grounded. But the ultimate conflict with all the doom and gloom can stop hanging over their heads while they do it. I think it would be a fairly mature-ish sort of ending. And to be honest, I think it'd be refreshing to see. So at the very least, if that doesn't end up happening, those of you who have stuck around this long to listen to me ramble have probably heard, possibly, the best ending the series could have. Which means I might have ruined the series as a whole for us, and every other ending will be just okay. Well, anyway, I think I'm done rambling now. If the writers of RWBY, for whatever reason, have been watching this, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do so, and I'm very sorry if I've annoyed you with my ramblings. It's very hard to love a show so much and have these misgivings, but it should be noted I only have them because I care so much about the show. And should you agree that this is the best way to end the series and want to steal this idea, go ahead. You can leave me a nice little mention in the credits somewhere. For now, that's my rant over. Thank you everyone so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you in the next one. So until then, stay tuned.